The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the raucous sex robot that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Yeah, so, we last week talked about Subservience, which had a female robot brought into a domestic situation, and I thought this was going to be kind of similar. I feel like this is probably the least Frankenstein thing we've watched, but I did enjoy it. It's just a kind of a slight little, 40s rom-com kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there is the Frankenstein element, right? This guy created a feminine robot that is basically autonomous. However, she is not the star of the show.
Yeah, we barely get the robot in this. It's kind of like, it's really more about, it's more of like a Shakespearean kind of comedy of errors, but it was really fun. Like, it's like a British comedy, so it's got dry humor, really quick wit. The jokes are coming real fast. For
a film from the late 1940s, it's also kind of risque.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it was made in England, so I guess it could have at least gotten to dodge the, the Hays Code stuff. I mean, I'm sure, England had its own set of, censorship stuff at the time, but I don't know as much about that. But I know the Hays Code was real hard and in full effect at this point.
Yeah, well, it would still be a few more years before the video nasty thing would become a real big thing, or the Margaret Thatcher being a pain in the ass for everybody, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about The Perfect Woman.
Yeah.
So this is based on a stage play, right?
That's okay. Yeah, I did not read that, but that feels right. Like it's set in basically 2 or 3 locations. And it's like, one location for a while, then another, and then another at the end. So that makes sense. Like, it feels like it would have worked well that way.
Yeah, according to the information I'm looking at, the original play began on September 11th of 1948. This came out in May 1949. So it was a pretty new play at the time, but apparently everyone liked it enough to make it a movie.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, we start. We've got a butler waking up his, master or whatever. We've got, he's carrying in a tray of tea, and the room's dark, and he starts opening all the windows.
Right now, the butler's name is Ram's Head, but Roger Cavendish, the guy he's the butler to, calls him Baba.
Mm-hmm. Or sometimes Ramsey.
Right.
Which is it's
a pet name.
Yeah, at some point he goes through and explains it, but it's like, it's Ram's Head, sheep, that's...
Yeah. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah. But right away we get a really good idea of what these two characters are like, because the butler is yelling 8 o'clock, like super loud, which wouldn't normally be a thing that a butler would do to his master. Like, he's trying, would normally try to be like cool or whatever. But then Roger wakes up and is like, 8 o'clock? You're waking me up in the middle of the night? So they're buddies, and Roger is clearly like a rake, a cad. And, Ramsey is, sort of in on it. They're friends. There's even a few moments where I was like, is there like gay subtext between the two of them? I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but there was I can't remember. There was 1 or 2 moments where it felt a little bit like it might be the case.
Yeah.
But they clearly have a really close friendship anyway.
Right. So Ram's Head, he's kind of the prototypical Jeeves character in that he's smarter than his boss, but he also keeps his boss together.
Yeah. Yeah, because the reason he woke him in the middle of the night is to give him bad news that they are financially embarrassed.
Oh, no. I love that. Instead of going, we're fucking broke, dude. We're financially embarrassed.
Yeah, it's such a good way to say it.
Yep.
And so, but, Roger's like, well, call the bank. They'll give us a loan, or call my aunt, her ladyship.
Right.
He goes through all the normal there's all kinds of people. If you're rich, it's easy to stay rich,
Mm-hmm.
But no, he's worn out his welcome in all those places. The bank is not extending his overdraft. His aunt won't give him any more money until he proves that he has a job. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I have a job. It's a PR job that I don't actually have to go to, but I have it.
Right, it's for a cookie company, basically.
Yeah, and Ramsey's like, nah, they fired you weeks ago.
Right.
You don't have a job.
You got fired 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But they then go to their backstory about how they were both in the army together in Cairo.
Yeah. So they sit down, and Ramsey is going through the want ads in the newspaper and reading off various job opportunities to Roger.
I love how Ramsey goes, wanted a good man with good intelligence. Oh, nope, that's no good.
Yeah. There's so many gags here. And, Roger's like, I think you're just reading the bad ones. There must be good. Here, hand me the paper. And he flips through it and is like, what about this one? Young man looking for adventure?
With good connections, looking for adventure.
Yeah, he's like, this sounds like me. Give him a call.
This harkens back to the old internet meme of the going back in time. I've only done this once.
Yes. What was...
Safety not guaranteed.
Yes, yeah, that they did end up making a movie of that was kind of fun, but yeah, it was just that weird ad that was memed everywhere. It was great.
Yeah.
But so the butler calls. He talks to Professor Bellman on the phone, and in the same way that Ramsey is a Jeeves archetype, Bellman is your classic nutty professor. Mm-hmm. He's got crazy hair. He's real, absent-minded. He gets confused really easily about basic everyday things, but is brilliant when it comes to his one, professor type thing. Right. We get this, Ramsey's like, okay, yeah, we'll come out to the old dark house. Oh, the old park house. Yeah.
Right. Because Ramsey's like, oh no, this is going to be a horror movie. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that at all.
Yeah, so we go straight from there to the professor's house, where he is. The professor is assembling his lady robot Olga. He's got her head. He's attaching it, and he's talking to his maid, who's helping him.
This
get everything
is Butters,
ready.
or otherwise known as by Penny as Buttercup.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, I've got people coming to look at, but I need you to keep Penny out from under my feet. Just keep her hidden away. I don't want her causing any trouble today. So Miss Butters is like, okay, sure. But then Penelope comes right in, and they have a really good rapport. They're really close, and she's really quick-witted, so she's really snappy on her feet with him. And she's like, why did you make your robot look like me? It's so weird. I hate looking at this robot that's like my weird twin.
Now, creepily, he says, well, she is, I call her the perfect woman after all. That's probably not something you should be saying to your niece.
Yeah, he outright says, what else should I model her on? I mean, and yeah, it seemed a little weird.
Right.
But
by the way, I like this trope of he can't be her dad. He has to be her uncle.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. There's not really an explanation for where her family is. I mean, she doesn't seem to have parents. It's just her uncle that she's really close with.
But oddly enough, so does Roger Cavendish. He only has his aunt.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And so then we go back to Roger and Ramsey, who are driving over. And Ramsey's like, the professor said there's no danger involved. It's perfectly safe. Mm-hmm. And Roger's like, does it seem weird that he felt like he needed to say that? Right. It's one of those my T-shirt is raising more questions than I thought it would answer. But they're like, well, we'll find out when we get there. And And back at the house, the professor is like, okay, Mrs. Butters, why don't you take Penny out on a shopping trip? I've got a list of things that I need for Olga.
Right, and on the list is a pair of silk underwear.
Yeah, and Mrs. Butters is scandalized. Like, she says, a pair of silk... What? Like, she won't even say the word, but, like, it's obvious what she's talking about.
Right.
And, the professor's like, well, I mean, Olga needs nice things. She needs to look like a real perfect woman.
He's going to have sex with his robot, isn't he? That makes it so much even worse.
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, this is subservience all over again.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, put the really nice lingerie on the robot.
You don't put the lingerie on the robot.
But Penny is not excited about this trip because she's like, oh, yeah, you're giving me busy work and you're going to make me buy nicer things for the robot than I get. That's
right.
But
remember, Uncle, you have to take me to the ball tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meanwhile, outside, Roger and the butler have arrived and they're talking in the yard and Ramsey's like, you don't think there's a chance that we're going to get like fired into space in a rocket or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Roger's like, I mean, if we do, like, we'll eventually have to come down, right? Like, it should be fine.
Right. I hope there's no explosions. All of a sudden, explosions in the house. Fires are going off.
Yeah. It's like, Miss Butters is leading them through the house, and they just keep jumping. There's all kinds of weird noises. Mm-hmm. And this is, as they're going, Roger explains the whole thing about Baba. Mm-hmm. And, the professor takes them, guides them into a study, not his lab.
Right, and immediately he goes up, because the guy apparently has ADHD, immediately goes into telling them about Olga's construction without giving them any type of context at all.
Yeah, like, this means nothing to these two guys.
Right.
But he's like, so... Or they're like, wait, say this, like, speak English, basically. And he's like, I've made a woman. And they're like, you made a woman?
Yes, by myself. With no other help.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, she's a robot, but, like, she looks like a real woman, and she's supposed to be the perfect woman, but I need some people to test her. So I want you to escort her, take her around, test drive her, and he's like, well, I say she's a woman, but, like, strictly speaking, like, she's genderless. She has no sex. She's just a robot. And they kind of make some, like, jokes, the no sex thing.
No
like,
sex. No sex.
As you said, this is this has a lot of winking kind of innuendos in it.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I do find it interesting that he's created a list of keywords that he himself says. It's like, keywords were a thing in 1949? Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it sounds similar to, like, the old text-based video games. Mm-hmm. It's like walk forward, left, right, that kind of stuff. But for some reason, he included, don't use the keyword love around her. If you say
whatever
love,
you do, don't do that.
She will glitch out and will respond with intense violence. So that's the only word that's off limits, which seems like a crazy thing to build into your robot.
Right. Maybe he just hasn't worked out the kinks.
Yeah.
But the professor is like, tell you what, guys, I'm going to make this worth your while. I'll give you £100 now, which that's like, what, a couple thousand for a date, basically?
Yeah, this is and so he gives them half up front, and, like, Roger is, like, excited about that.
Yeah, that'll take care of his issues.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, I have the last few things to prepare, so come back this evening.
6 p.m.
Yeah. So they start to leave, and the professor just follows them out, keeps chatting with them, and they're like, hey, you live here.
Right,
like,
he basically walks out of the house getting ready to go somewhere else.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, right. And he goes back inside, and then we just go to the,
Penny
the shops. Yeah, and Penny is just annoyed at the whole process of shopping, and this is like, classic era shopping where, like, model girls come out in the outfits so that you can see what they look like and stuff, and they're watching this all go on, and Penny's just rolling her eyes. She's not having a good time.
Well, she's more interested in the two young men that are supposed to come by at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and Mrs. Butters is kind of like taking, listening into this, but not really, like, responding. But she's She and Penny are very close as well. And we eventually we have like back at at Roger's house, he and Ramsey are looking over the instructions that the professor sent home, trying to learn the keywords, how to control the robot.
They both are very interested in the movement of her legs.
Yeah. And so to practice, Ramsey is looking at the book and pretending to be the robot, and Roger's trying to use the instructions
And the keywords.
and quickly learning how easy it is to mess up and have the robot crash into things and stuff. So,
So
Ramsey's
they're prepping
having
us
fun.
for the events to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like here, it's intentional. Ramsey is playing the jokes, but eventually they're going to have to be really on top of things when they have the real robot. And eventually, like, we get another scene at the shops where Penny is so annoyed with the whole thing, she
Right.
like gets into an argument with the clerk.
Well,
and
there's
it's just
a
like-
great joke she makes. She says one of the dresses has too many bones. The designer says, "Well, I was feeling very limp when I designed it." It's like, okay, I know what that meant, right? I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah. That is
Interesting
really
they're
good.
making those kind of jokes this early on.
Yeah. So they eventually leave, and then the Roger and Ramsey realize they need to get like a hotel room. They need someplace to stay. I don't know why they can't just stay at. I guess maybe Roger can't just bring a woman to stay the night at his house because that would be scandalous in the 40s.
Well, not only that, but Bellman did tell him he wants them to take her out to a place. And I think he does mention getting a hotel room.
Yeah. So they end up like trying a few places and they don't have any luck. And he's like, okay, what about try the Splendide? And Ramsey's like, okay, Splendid. And he's like, oh, I thought it was pronounced Splendide. But they just go there and talk to like the manager who's like, nope, we're all booked up. And Ramsey keeps kind of pushing, trying to like find a room, and eventually he finds out that the bridal suite is open, but the management's like, we only give that to newlyweds.
Right, and the manager is Mr. Farini, I believe his name is.
And so the manager is like vaguely ethnic, maybe Italian, like he's just got an accent and is just kind of like, sort of a wacky foreigner type character.
He's Italian, leaning on almost Spanish, right? That's kind of where he's falling.
And then we'll eventually get like sort of like the main like bellboy who is like, I think they say is Swedish, but is like kind
Swiss.
of vaguely
He's Swiss.
Swiss. Okay. But yeah, he's similar where he's like, yeah, he's Swiss, but he's vaguely German, vaguely Swedish. He's just all the like, that sort of area of Europe.
Well, the character's name is Wolfgang Winkel II. So yeah, very very Germanic, right?
Yeah.
And he's a character. I love it.
Yeah. And the two of them together like really, bounce off of each other in a really fun way.
Yeah, we find out that Wolfgang was once a businessman, but he went into bankruptcy. So maybe he wasn't so good at that either.
Yeah. So yeah, eventually, Ramsey is like, well, that's, it's Mr. Cavendish and his new love. This will be perfect. And so the manager's like, okay, fine, we'll set that up. Meanwhile, Roger has gotten cornered by this nosy lady who is like his aunt's best friend.
Yes, Miss Diane, I believe her name is.
Yeah. But of course, because this has got to be set up as this whole big comedy of errors, as soon as Ramsey gets things squared away and like leads Roger away from this annoying lady, the lady overhears the manager saying that Mr. Cavendish has, booked the bridal suite for him and his new bride.
Right,
And
which
so
it
she's
was
like,
Ramsey that did it because he couldn't get any other rooms, yeah.
yeah, so she's like, she immediately runs over, gets on the phone, and calls Roger's aunt to let her know that Roger has gotten married.
Who has a stereotypical French maid, like, in the whole outfit.
Yeah. And she's like, well, okay, I'm going to drop everything. I will fly back. I'm going to, I want to know what's going on here.
First plane back to congratulate him, right?
Yeah. And then we go back to the professor's house where he has like a colleague who we'll only have in this one scene. And he's like,
ready to see him tonight.
Yeah, the professor wants to show off Olga, and his colleague's like, well, I can't wait to hear your lecture tonight. And the professor's like, what lecture tonight? No, I'm going to the ball.
Right.
And he's like,
he
nah,
tries to get
you're
the guy to dance with Penny, right?
Yeah, he's like, no, you're booked at a lecture, and I'm going to be attending. I'm not going to be at the ball. And he's like, oh no, Penny's going to be so mad. I promised to take her to this, and now I've got to do this lecture instead.
Right, and now Penny does kind of interrupt them, but she's wearing Olga's dress. Mm-hmm. She's like, hey, doesn't it look nicer on me because I'm a human woman?
Yeah. And, of course, the professor has to break the news, and she's not surprised. She's just like, this happens all the time. You're always letting me down. You always forget what your obligations, and I'm always the one who suffers for it.
Right. Well, Miss Butters has a better idea. She says, tell you what. Well, this is what after the professor's already gone. She's like, all right, here's the deal. You're going to be Olga tonight, and you're going to go out with those boys.
Yeah, you just pretend to be a robot. You'll have a night on the town. You'll get to have some fun. And then near the end of the night, I will show up with Olga and swap you out, and so the professor will never know, and you'll just get to have a fun night.
Right, and Penny is all about this. She's like, hell yeah, because she's a little mischievous,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's definitely excited about this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So then we get the Ramsey and Roger appearing.
Ramsey tries to make another run real quick. He's like, nope, I don't want to do this. One more time.
Yeah, he's, like the house is kind of spooky. He's just not having it. But when they get there, the professor is gone to the lecture, and they're like, oh, well, we'll just come back another time. And Miss Butters is like, no, you promised. He's, he paid you already. You got to go through with this. So they're like, okay, fine. Take us to Olga. And so Miss Butters takes them into the lab where there's a bunch of... They keep touching things explode. They're just not meant to be in a science lab for sure.
Right, they touch some robot legs that actually respond to their touch.
Yeah.
Which they're probably like, I need to not be paying this much attention to these legs.
Yeah. And so they eventually, in the corner, they see the shape of a person under a sheet.
Well, they make a statement about, I can't stand for this. And then immediately, Olga / Penny jumps up.
Yep. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. So they pull the sheet off, and then they're like, oh, wow, look at how lifelike this robot is. And they're like, poking her in the face, pulling on her ears.
Stroking her cheeks gently.
Yeah, and then they inspect her legs as well. And they're like, wow, these are so lifelike. This is so great.
They even got the squishy bits on the back of the leg.
Yeah, and we get a great gag where Ramsey's like, man, the professor just did a slap-up job, and she just slaps him in the face. Like, takes the opportunity to pretend like that's an instruction.
Mm-hmm. She enjoys this way too much already. You can tell the actress is loving this.
Yeah, every time that they're not looking at her, she's just grinning ear to ear, and then, immediately goes robot stone-faced again. So eventually, the guys lead her outside, and Mrs. Butters helps kind of get her into the car with them.
The idea is, I believe she'll be back by 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. or she'll meet them at 9 p.m.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's the plan. And then the next thing we see is the three of them in a car. She's in the back seat. The top is down. And Roger and Ramsey are both like, man, it is really cold and rainy. I'm glad we have these nice coats. Meanwhile, we see her
this
not
robot
in a
feels
coat.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. She is shivering, trying to hold it together.
Well, Cavendish literally turns to Ramsey and he's like, Are your teeth chattering? It's kind of comfortable, though.
Yeah. So then we get to the hotel where the manager is arguing with Wolfgang.
Telling him to learn perfect English like he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we get our trio arriving, and as soon as they walk in, the lobby orchestra just starts playing the bridal march.
Right. Cavendish is like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. And this bit here, we get the first sort of the ongoing joke that really holds this movie together, which is other people saying things that a robot could interpret as instructions, and Penny playing this up, causing trouble, so that Roger is a nervous wreck. He's running around, panicking, has to keep yelling, stop, or, someone will say, we never even left, and she turns left. And he's like, no, that's not right. And she, they're just, it's constant, and it's a joke that could get one note, but the way it's done in this, it's just funny the whole time.
Because she's in on the joke, right? Like, she is the person telling the joke, effectively.
Yeah, I think if it was just a robot, it wouldn't be as funny. But the fact that she's doing it on purpose to fuck with them is what's so good.
Mr. Neal, paging Mr. Neal, and she drops on her knees, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And also the whole time that this is all going on, Roger's also trying to complain to Ramsey, like, you got the bridal suite? Like, what are we going to do? Like, rumors will start. Like, my aunt hears, we're going to be in huge trouble.
Right. Oh, no. I wonder if there's where are those four shadows coming from again? Damn it.
Right.
I had them out of here.
Yeah. And so we have them, they're headed up in the elevator, and then we see that his aunt arrives with her friend. So, yeah, we're going to get more comedy of errors stuff with that going on. Meanwhile, up in the room, we have a brief moment where Penny's alone and she's like excited, like she's like, I got some freedom, I can play around in the hotel room, but that's when Wolfgang comes in to get a food order, and so like Roger and Ramsey come out of the bedroom and they start talking to him, and we get a great gag where like they're like, we don't want much, and then they list like an insane amount of food.
We want something light like soup, fish, chicken, joint, sweet cheese, dessert, and maybe some coffee after that. We're not really hungry. And then right. Cavendish is like, oh, I'm really thirsty. I need something to drink. And then Ramsey says, oh, yeah, we'll have a bottle of scotch, 24 bottles of beer, a bottle of scotch, a small fizzy lemonade for her, and a bottle of scotch.
Yeah.
I think he likes scotch. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And there's a bit where like Roger thinks she moved when she wasn't supposed to, but they just kind of like let it slide. They don't really look into that.
Right.
And Ramsey's like, I think I might even saw her blink. And he's like, no, of course she couldn't blink. They wouldn't do that.
No, that would be silly. But look at her beautiful eyes and the curve of her eyebrows. Mm-hmm. They're like really admiring the professor's work.
Right. Yeah. And so then they, I think they they leave her again.
Yeah, they're going to change to get dinner, but they're going to literally lock her up to where she won't be able to get out. Yeah, and so while they're out, Penny gets on the phone, calls Mrs. Butters. She's panicked. She's like, they've locked me in the room. In the bridal suite.
So things are out of hand. I need you to bring Olga right away. I got to get out of this.
Right. Immediately door knocks, and who should it be but Wolfgang? Wolfgang is smitten with Penny/Olga.
Yeah, he's brought a big bouquet of flowers, and Penny's like, no, I don't need these. My husband's very jealous. Don't talk to me. If he sees you even look at me, he might kill you. And
kill me? Like, I'm Swiss. I'm neutral.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so at that point, Roger and Ramsey come out of the bedroom, and they're like, oh, who are these flowers for? And Wolfgang's like, they're for you, not right. Definitely not for the missus.
Well, because as he's about to say for her, like she just takes her thumb and drags it across her neck. He's like, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And then Ramsey just runs him off. He's like, get out of here.
Yeah. So then downstairs in the kitchen, Wolfgang is working with the manager to make all the dinner. The manager's like, I don't understand why it's a trio staying up there. The best man is staying in the room with them, and this bride doesn't speak. What a strange group of people up there.
Right, these British and their weird customs, right?
Mm-hmm. And Wolfgang is like, well, no, I talked to her. She's very sweet, but her husband is very jealous. We need to be careful around him. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, upstairs, the guys are reading through the manual again, and like, how are we? She can't eat, so what are we gonna do when they bring us the food? Like, And meanwhile, Penny is like frustrated that she knows she can't eat as a robot because she's hungry and wants food.
Yeah.
And that's when the manager and Wolfgang stroll in with a huge amount of food, and they're not just gonna like leave the room service and go. They're gonna serve these courses
personally.
So they're gonna be like present watching this. They serve soup, And we get like a great bit where every time they're looking away, Roger and Ramsey are trying to scarf down her food so it looks like she's eating.
Right, but when they're distracted, she comes in and just starts gobbling up their food.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And I forget the word. Wolfgang is trying to talk about the chicken, but he keeps calling it like the hoon. Yeah, and he's like, the manager says, "Who made you this way?"
Right.
And he's like, my father. And you had a father?
Yes, he was an infamous yodeling watchmaker. He kept trying to make a yodeling watch. He just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, it just never worked. And then the manager's like, why doesn't your missus ever move? Ramsey's like, there's a perfectly good explanation, and it is hypnotism. Roger is a hypnotist, and she has headaches, and the hypnotism helps. So that's how it works, and Roger will show you. And Roger's like, what?
Right.
But he tries this whole elaborate hypnotism demonstration that somehow works on Wolfgang.
Which is amazing. Like, that's so good. And they're all surprised because holy shit, it worked.
Yeah, Wolfgang just collapses.
Right, but as they drag him off to the couch, she just starts scarfing down more food. She's tearing into the chicken and everything.
Yeah. And the guys are like, we're full. That was a lot. Like, we don't need dessert. Why don't you guys you just take the rest of the food out? We're gonna go to bed. And the manager's like,
all three of you?
Best man? And they're like, yeah, he sleeps under the bed. It's an old English custom.
Right, Wolfgang pops up and says, I want to be the best man, too. And Farini just starts beating the crap out of him.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have Mrs. Butters with Olga at a train station. There's like a drunk guy who's being very strange.
He's won something because he has a trophy. Mm-hmm. I don't know what. And
he tries to give Olga a puff of his cigarette.
She takes it.
Which she takes, and then when the smoke comes billowing out of her ears, which freaks him out a little bit. Meanwhile, we go back to the lobby of the hotel where where Roger's aunt is like...
Her and Lady Diana have arrived.
They're like, I can't wait to meet this bride. We should go upstairs and try to find out what's going on there.
Right. Diana makes a remark about never seeing the inside of a bridal suite. Like, she's married, right? Or is she?
Yeah, it's unclear what the deal with her is. We never see anybody with her.
Interesting.
But then back in the room, Roger and Ramsey are trying to get Penny into bed, or the robot into bed.
Right, but Ramsey kind of wants to sleep in the bed with Roger, which is kind of something. But he's like, no, you've got to get out of here.
Yeah. And they're really having trouble figuring out the right instructions to make the robot lay down in a bed. And Penny is just really fucking with him here. She's having a great time.
Well, they try to strip her, and she's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, they're like, "Take off dress," and she just kind of panics for a second. And they're like, "Well, maybe that you just have to do that manually." So they do. They take her dress off, and again, like Subservient, she's wearing some pretty nice lingerie under that dress.
Mm-hmm. And they admire the work, of course.
Yeah. And she's, a little uncomfortable there, but I mean, this is, it's nice, but it's, 1940s slip type lingerie. It's lacy and black, but it's covering everything.
Right. Cavendish almost says, it's so and then Ramsey's like, nope, don't say L-O-V, and, the joke is he was going to say lovely.
Yeah.
But nope, no love, because we know what's happened so far.
Yeah, but he's like, well, I mean, the doctor, he's just got great attention to detail. I expected sawdust to pop out when we took the dress off.
And as they pick her up, they're like, oh, she's really warm. Does she have an internal thermostat? What's going on?
Yeah.
It's like she's human.
Strange.
Yeah.
And then they look through the luggage that the professor sent to put her into a nightie, and they can't find one. And they're like, I guess we're just going to have to put her to bed in this and just cover her up, and it'll look like she's in a nightie.
But then she sneezes. Roger even says, bless you, but no one takes note of it after that. And she's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. So they eventually, they're like, we need to lay her down in bed. And when they say lay down, she falls backwards. Roger catches her. But even though this is a robot that he felt comfortable undressing, when she falls back into his arms, he's like very careful to not touch her breasts.
Yeah.
Even though theoretically they're plastic or whatever, he thinks at least. So they end up, I think Ramsey gets her feet and they like swing her and toss her into bed.
Cavendish has to go get a drink after this because this is too much.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the train, somebody is trying to convince Mrs. Butters to take his seat. She's like, "No, I couldn't. I'm totally fine." But because he says take a seat, Olga, who actually is a robot, sits in a guy's lap, and he looks very uncomfortable. I couldn't tell if it's just like a lady is sitting in my lap, or if like because she's a robot, she's very heavy.
Well, he had to really focus, probably.
Yeah, he looks really, really uncomfortable.
Now, did I see this right? Because I thought at this moment, also, doesn't Miss Butters get groped on the train? She goes,
notice. Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
The train where sexual assault can be hidden because of so many people.
Right. Then we have, up in the hotel suite, Ramsey is drinking alone and singing to himself.
Well,
because
he tries to make himself a scotch and soda, but he shoots the soda out onto the floor.
Yeah, he's holding his drink at the wrong end.
Yeah.
And, Penny is, like, faking being, a sleeping robot in the bed. Mm-hmm. And then there's a knock at the door, and he's like, who could that be? So he tries to, like, cover the robot and, like, rushes to the door where it's, of course, Roger's aunt.
Right. She accuses him of being intoxicated. He says, not yet. I'm trying to get there.
Yeah, and so while Ramsey is in the front room, Penny is running around in the bedroom trying to listen in through the door just to see what's going on.
Right, and of course, Aunt Mary's like, there's a woman in there. I could see her moving around.
Mm-hmm. And Ramsey, they kind of argue about it. She's like, I heard about this. There's a bridal suite. If Roger's gotten married, I want to know what's going on. And eventually, Ramsey has a pretty good excuse. He's like, no. I got married. My bride is in there, and the room is under Roger's name. It was a wedding gift. I can't afford a room like this. Only Roger could. So
right, it's his wedding present to me.
Yeah, and then the manager comes in and is like,
Well, Wolfgang specifically also just like, oh yeah, Mr. Cavendish. Where's his wife? Because he's the one getting married.
And Ramsey's like, no, it's just because the room's in his name. There's some confusion, but I swear it's me.
No, Mr. It's for Mr. Cavendish.
Yeah. So, she's not buying it. And then back in the bar, Roger's trying to get drunk, but the manager. So Wolfgang's upstairs. The manager's arguing with Roger downstairs, and is like, you left your bride alone with your best man? Like, you got to go upstairs. This is highly inappropriate.
He keeps steering Roger away from his drink.
Yeah, he, like, gets it right to his lips, and then the manager will pull his arm down to be like, no, you got to go upstairs. So, finally, Roger gives in and goes to head back upstairs. Meanwhile, we get a bit with Olga and Mrs. Butters, where she almost walks into the men's restroom, and Miss Butters has to yell stop at the last second.
Right. That would have been fun.
Yeah. And at that point, Roger comes back in their room to find his aunt there, and he has to try to talk his way out of this.
Well, Ramsey's like, well, it's your turn. Bye. I'm going downstairs.
I tried. It did not work. So have at it. And he's like, no, she's not a real woman. She's sort of a woman, and I'm not married to her. I'm just pretending.
Right.
I mean,
so it's making it worse with every word he says. Right.
Yeah. Like he thinks this is she thinks this is like a sex worker or something. He's like, no. She belongs to another man. Right. But he offered me $100 to take her out for the night. And I couldn't say no to that deal.
Right. Rough. But then at one point he just gives up, tries to hypnotize her.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, wait, you don't think I'm talking about, like, a real lady, do you? And she's like, well, certainly not. I mean, what you've said, this is no lady.
Right.
And the whole time, Penny is eavesdropping, and she is cracking up. She thinks this is hilarious. But Roger's like, well, come with me. I'll show you. I can explain it all. So he brings the aunt into the bedroom, and Penny manages to get back in bed and cover up at the last second. Mm-hmm. Still, the aunt, thinks this is, like,
a person,
a real woman.
Yeah, which she
would
like,
be. No,
right.
I'm saying this is a robot. She's made of gears and wires. This is not a person.
She would fool anyone.
Mm-hmm. And, of course the aunt's like, okay, I understand what you're saying now, but I still don't believe you. This is nonsense. And he's like, what can we do to prove it?
She couldn't feel a thing. She couldn't see or hear. She's just a contraption.
Mm-hmm. And the aunt's like, oh, I have a way to test that. She pulls a pin and stabs Penny. And Penny can do a lot of faking being a robot, but she's still a flesh and blood person. And she screams and immediately starts crying.
Right. And his aunt is like, oh, you're a wicked, wicked young man.
Mm-hmm. So she storms out. Roger stays with Penny because she's crying, and he is a decent guy. And is also incredibly confused because he's like, "Wait, what? You've been a person this like?"
Right. So and Penny reveals, "You left me out to freeze in the car. You wouldn't let me eat,
yeah.
So I had to scarf down food."
Yeah, she's really upset about how much he's mistreated her, and he's like, "I didn't know. I thought you were a robot. Like I wasn't."
He was laughing at her too at this point because it's a hilarious situation.
Yeah, this is so wacky. And, finally, like, Penny's like, you're laughing at me, and she stomps her foot down, stomps on his foot, and then he's like, ow! And then she kind of realizes, like, this is so ridiculous. She starts laughing.
And they laugh together.
Yeah, they're having a nice little moment here.
Would this be their meet cute, or was earlier their meet cute? Which...
Yeah, it's kind of confusing how this all comes together. Mm-hmm.
But then Butters arrives with Olga.
Mm-hmm. And, at that point, Ramsey is downstairs at the bar drinking and sees Olga and is like, wait, what? And he's like, I've been drinking too much. I need to cool it.
Right, I'm seeing double.
Yeah. We go back to upstairs and they kind of cleverly just like, Penny has explained all the stuff to Roger while we were away, so we don't have to hear her tell the story we just saw.
Right.
But clearly they are hitting it off. They've got good banter together. They're just having a good time.
Yeah. It's like they were made for each other or something.
Yeah, and then suddenly they're both like, oh no, your uncle is going to come here.
Disinherit you and disintegrate me. And then she's like, well, what about your aunt? Oh, the other way around. she'll disinherit me and disintegrate you.
Yeah. So they're like, what are we going to do? And then like, they like... get distracted and like kiss or like get really close. I don't think they actually kiss, but
no, he turns at the last second and she kisses him on the cheek.
Oh, okay. But he turns because Mrs. Butters bursts in with Olga, and they're like, okay, what can we do? We got to figure this out. And Penny's like, okay, I have an idea. So if we can trick your aunt into thinking that Olga is me, then she'll understand how you got tricked into thinking that I was Olga.
Right.
And Roger's like, wait, what? And she just says it again, and he's like, yes, okay. I got you this time. That is very confusing, but okay. So they put the plan into motion. They call the aunt to come back upstairs.
Right. We have a moment getting her into bed as well.
Mm-hmm. And Ramsey comes in and is like, I have to tell you, I just saw the weirdest thing. And then he sees both Olga and Penny standing right next to each other. And he's like, whoa, no, this is getting worse.
Right. I drank too much.
Yeah. But then we get, Roger and Penny explaining the scheme to Ramsey. And he's like, okay, yeah, I can help with that. And Ramsey is left alone to undress the actual robot, and has equally as much trouble as they did before with the fake one. But now, it's her legs keep sticking up, like he can't get her to lay flat.
Yeah, so Ramsey and Cavendish are trying to get her onto the bed. To get her onto the bed, they have to say three-wheel. Which,
see, I had trouble. At first, I thought they were saying freewheel, like freewheeling, and then I thought they were saying free will, like she has the capability to make her own decisions.
Right.
I had a lot of trouble understanding.
But yes, either way, when she gets her legs wrapped around Cavendish's head, which that wouldn't look good if his aunt walked in at that moment. He then yells, "4-wheel, 4-wheel!"
Yeah,
because it's one more than three. Anyway, somehow they do get her to stop choking him out.
Yeah, they eventually get everything calmed down, and so his aunt arrives, and Roger's like, just please come back into the room. I'll explain everything. This will all make sense. And she's like, don't want anything to do with this lady. I don't believe all your lies. And he's like, I promise, If you just come in there, you'll understand everything.
You could do the pin thing one more time, right?
Yeah, and so she finally is like, if this will make, if this will convince you, whatever, okay, fine. So she goes in with them and tries the pin test again, but this time she gets electrocuted.
Whoa.
It's a pretty good effect for the 40s, like the drawn on electricity, and it also causes Olga to like fly out of the bed and basically tackle Ramsey.
Right, and then Roger has to dig around in Ramsey's pocket to find the instructions, but instead finds a shopping list.
Yeah. So at that point, we have the manager bursts into the room, and he sees this like crazy dog pile.
Right, people.
Everybody laying on top of each other trying to get the robot off of Ramsey.
Oh, I never understand the English.
Yeah. Meanwhile, while this is all going on, Penny and Mrs. Butters are just having a nice little dinner. They went away. They can't be present for the scheme to work.
Well, they're having some drinks, and Miss Butters is like, "Hey, one more, buddy," and the waiter judges her. He's like, "Oh, another one?
Yeah.
How dare you, sir?"
But then they see the uncle come in, and they're like,
Professor
"Oh
Bellman.
shit! Yeah, so we gotta get upstairs." So
Mr. Professor Bellman says, "Oh, you're Mr. Bellman. I mean, I'm looking for Mr. Bellman. I mean, I'm Mr. Bellman."
Yeah. We get Penny running upstairs. And the manager is coming downstairs and sees, and it's like, wait, I just
saw you upstairs.
Yeah, so everybody's getting this weird double vision confusion here. So he's kind of like, it's like in a cartoon when somebody, like when Bugs Bunny goes crazy or whatever. It's like that level of like, he's just whacked out from having seen this duplicate person. And then Penny bursts into the room upstairs, and she's like, "Roger, darling, my uncle's here, and he's going to kill you."
Right? Oh, how sweet, right?
Yeah, Roger's like, "Kill who?" And she's like, "Why, you, darling, of course." And he's like, oh, no, I don't want that. That sounds bad.
And Miss Butters like, "Oh, he'll probably kill you too, Penny."
Yeah. And Mrs. Butters is having a great time. She's loving all this wackiness.
Well, she's spending time with her Baba. So she's laying on Ramsey.
Yeah.
So...
And he's not into it. He's like, "Please stop breathing in my face. Your breath smells of trifle."
Right.
And so the professor does burst in at that point and sees his robot, and he's worried that she's been damaged. And he's like, "Wait, Penny? Why are you here? What? And you're in the bridal suite? That's highly inappropriate. You should not be here."
Right. You shouldn't be here unless you're married. And then Cavendish is like, "That's a splendid idea, old boy.
Yeah.
Penny, will you marry me?"
Yeah. And Penny's like, "Yes, of course." And he's like, "Okay, so we're gonna get married. We love each other."
Yay.
And as soon as he says
Love.
the word, the robot just goes in like berserker mode. She is just like wrecking the hotel room, punching people, just destroying everything.
Wolfgang comes in and she Spartan kicks him in the chest and knocks him into the bathroom. And I'm like, "Oh, is she gonna electrocute him?" Nope.
Yeah, because he falls into the bath, which is full, and then instead she doesn't get in the bath with him. She runs out of the room, runs down the hall. Everybody chases after her. She runs off camera. We just hear an explosion, and we see a column collapse.
Farini walks out covered in dust. An abrupt ending. Yay.
Yeah, the end. Classic abrupt ending. Silly nonsense, like presumably the word of the day has destroyed Olga for good,
right?
But at least it all worked out for Penny and Roger,
right? So I wonder if either of them got disinherited, though. I guess Roger would be fine, but what about Professor Bellman? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure that he's not happy, but like I feel like he's probably happy for Penny that this is going on, because it seemed like early on, like she kept complaining that like, "I'm never gonna meet a man because I'm only ever out of the house with you at lectures, and it's all these old dusty professors and stuff." And the professor's like, "Oh, there's a ball tonight. You'll get to meet other people." So it seems like he wants that for her, but he just doesn't know how to set it up for her, so he may be kind of relieved that it happened organically.
Maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, this is one of the better comedies because Penny got to be the one playing the prank. Nothing was happening to her. She was doing all the things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a really sweet, kind of lighthearted movie, very silly. And, you know, like I said, like we get very little time with Olga the robot, so it's... The Frankenstein thing is a little bit of a stretch here. Of course, we didn't know that when we sat down to watch it, but I'm glad we did. I think it was fun. If I had already seen it before, I may have not put it on the schedule, but, you know, that's kind of the fun about, like, you know, making this commitment that any new Frankenstein things I hear about, I'm not going to watch till we watch them for the show.
Absolutely, unless we've already seen them, of course.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's the remain to be seen.
Yeah. So this was good. I definitely recommend it. I don't know that it's out anywhere. Like I couldn't find like physical media of it. I found it on like a weird like rare films streaming site that I can put in the show notes, but like wherever you can find it, it's definitely worth a watch. It's a, you know, quick breezy little rom-com, and they don't make them like this anymore.
No. At least as inoffensive as this one is. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still some, you know, some groping and stuff, but once again, it's where Penny has agency and nothing's happening to her.
Yeah, it's all in good fun, and yeah, Penny's having a great time through the whole thing. So yeah, it's that really is what makes this work is Penny being the person in on the joke.
Absolutely. And Miss Butters helping her out with that as well. All right, Anthony. Well, anything else we got to say about this?
I think that's it. You know, like I said, it's a pretty slight movie. There's not a lot going on here, but it's just fun.
All right. So, I mean, we had some tantalization last week. We have just pretty innocent, if not a little bit of body fun here. Do you want a big sad, Anthony?
Yeah.
Because I got one word for you. Superman.
Yeah, this is one that I have seen before, obviously, but I've been wanting to watch this for the show for a while. We're obviously the Iron Giant, the animated film that makes everyone cry, but is just such a beautiful, fun movie, and I have not seen it in years, so I'm very excited to get back to it.
Honestly, Vin Diesel's best acting that he's ever done, I think. Yeah,
it's so good. Yeah. It's definitely the thing that got him the Groot role, but it's just so good. It's just a classic. So it's going to be fun to revisit that and look at it from a Frankenstein angle, because I have not seen it since well before we started the podcast.
Absolutely, I'm excited to talk about it. Aside from that, do we have anything else to say?
I think that's it.
Where can they find us, Anthony?
So you can find us on all the socials at the Frankencast, including TikTok. You can also find us over on YouTube. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com, and you can find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where we've got well over 100 bonus episodes over there of all different types of things.
If you can't find something you like, it's impossible to please you.
Yeah, it's where we kind of get into things that don't quite fit into the main feed, but are still a lot of fun. We're getting ready to get back into some Munsters stuff. It's been a while since we've talked about that, so I'm excited to revisit that. But yeah, there's all kinds of good stuff over there. Comic books, classic stuff, weird animated specials, just, all kinds of things.
Absolutely. All right, well, anything else we got?
I think that's it.
Well then, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.